Hi, this is Privateer Station. Today we'll bring you day 502 of Putin's invasion into Ukraine. As always, with former advisor to the office of the President of Ukraine, Lieutenant Colonel Olexiy Arestovych, and Russian opposition politician, lawyer, and blogger Mark Feygin. Our usual thanks go to the Sun Express, to Dan Bailey, and of course to Bill. Thank you guys, you are fantastic in supporting our work. And with that, let's dive into day 502 on the eve of NATO summit. Enjoy. Dear friends, glad to see you all on Feygin Live. It's Monday today, July 10th. Time is 1 minute past 10 in Kiev. Same time in Moscow. And we're doing the usual stream with Olexiy Arestovych. Day 502. And greetings to Olexiy. Hello. Yes, hello, good evening. We have 45,000 starting with us. My usual ask, I understand it is summer and you have other reasons that force you to skip or ignore some of the streams, but if you can, please share a link, click the like button, click that bell, and do not forget to subscribe if you have not done that yet to Feygin Live, to Olexiy Arestovych, and to the Privateer Station if you are listening or watching that in English language. Let's start with the eve of summit. We'll have a stream on Wednesday when we'll be summarizing the results of it. Now there are a few hours left. Biden is already in Vilnius. I was giving an interview today that everything is placated in Vilnius. The whole Lithuania is covered with Ukrainian flags. Public opinion is definitely supportive of Ukraine, and I understand it's secondary, and the decision is made by the NATO organization itself, but there is definitely some moral pressure on the opponents of Ukraine's joining NATO. We understand it will not happen on this summit, but do you think that Biden's statements and other participant statements, there may be more than guarantees of security coming out of this? And I will quote Dmitry Kuleba, the head of Ukrainian Foreign Affairs. He is saying, and I direct quote, that guarantees of security should not be reviewed as alternative to NATO membership, but as something that fills that vacuum between today, at present, and the moment when we join NATO. This is an important detail that should be viewed in this light. I understand that Ukraine cannot join NATO during the current summit, but it is time for NATO to send an invitation to us. We understand we're not talking about the immediate joining. So your estimate, your opinion? Mark? There is not much to prognosticate here. The talks themselves about guarantees imply that nobody is looking at Ukraine joining NATO immediately. Guarantees mean that there'll be some gap, and likely a very long one. What do you mean long? Like dozen of years? Well, I don't know about dozen years, but definitely not a few weeks, right? There will be likely three elements: aid to Ukraine in military and equipment and ammunition, so that will be relatively positive. Also, guarantees of security and safety for Ukraine. I am also expecting that to be positive, but in regards to Ukraine being accepted into NATO, I do not expect anything optimistic. So 2 buckets will be warm and 1 bucket will be cold. All right. What do you think can make that pill sweeter? Given the fact that there will not be made a decision. Do you think there is a task to make it sweeter? Yeah, I think there is one. Because Zelensky, first of all, is going there. And Biden is planning to hold, already reporting that Biden is planning to meet Erdogan and Zelensky. And 35 countries are already on board with Ukraine expedited joining NATO. And even America, we understand that they have their position, but they're not ready to go against the majority, or that supermajority already. So they likely will have to search for a compromise. That's always a way of politics, and they might have some dates, remote dates, appear in the resulting communique from that summit. Is there anything else you can prognose on this? No, I'm a skeptic. You are a skeptic. Yes, I am. So nothing will move, you think? Nothing will change, that Ukraine will need to meet certain standards and all? Right. There may be a certain protest action, because into press there was a leak from Lithuania that Lithuania may refuse to sign the declaration if there's not going to be significant aid to Ukraine and more concrete dates about Ukraine joining NATO. And that, I think, will be the first one in the whole history of NATO bloc. And why do you think they need that confrontation? Because they could just write down that Ukraine might join NATO by 2026, for example, right? Remote enough? But yeah, they may, but they may not. And I don't see any optimism after Biden's statement that he's not for Ukraine joining NATO immediately. And let's take it calm. It is already good. Military aid is good, and general security guarantees is good. That's better than was before. And Council Ukraine-NATO as a permanent organization is also a positive factor. So, you think in regards to weapons, jets, long-range missiles, will there be solutions as compensation for the lack of progress in the other parts? It will be at some point. Why not now? I agree, why not now? We'll see. So, that rather strong position of Joe Biden that doesn't allow for variations around it, are they afraid of something in Moscow? And there was Burns' mission and negotiations with his counterparts. Or is it is it a fear of Moscow, or is it some internal processes? And there could be a ton of explanations. And one can pick an easy one, that he might want to play both Democrats and some conservatives to obtain their support. So how do you see that? Well, there is definitely a group that is concerned with Russia being pushed too far into the arms of China. Then there is another group in states, another point of view, that Ukraine should not be fed with our taxpayers' money because it's a corrupt state, and all that rhetoric usually propelled by Trump and isolationists. And then there are groups that are saying that, yes, we should be intervening, we should be helping Ukraine, but we should not be bringing that to the nuclear war. It could be just the logic of election campaign, because they're already getting to that time frame. Yeah, soon the race starts. Okay, interesting. We have 120,000 with us, 41,000 likes. Let's skim over the front and touch upon a bunch of other news that deserve discussion. All right, on the eve of summit, do you think there are chances for summit to counteroffensive to intensify in lieu of summit? And we discussed about that before, that very likely it will not. And I understand the situation on the front is rather stable now. Right, the front dynamics are not determined by NATO summit. It is determined by the capabilities. Right, that's correct too. And in the current conditions, one would need more resources to intensify it further. Of course, we did not still have a lot of resources that we could bring into this fight, but where would we bring them? Because for that, there's got to be a breach in the Russian defense line where we can pour more troops. Let's still go over the front. Okay, we got some news about Antonov Bridge. near Olexiy that Ukraine still has a captured or liberated area on that side of Dnieper, and Russian side, the aggressors are trying to push Ukrainian troops out, but they're failing to do that. And it's mostly Russian side commenting on that, but our officials also confirmed that we still have a small perch on the other side of the river. Same situation on the south. On left group is fighting for Pitikhatki, and then same struggle near Avdiivka and Marinka. There's not much change, and reports about Bakhmut that our troops are actually liberating territories there, despite the vehement resistance of our enemy. They're trying to hold on the northern and southern elevations near Bakhmut, where you can see our troops are gaining ground. And they're also trying to activate themselves in Limansk and Kupiansk direction, that northeastern front. And it's a mixed area, some parts where we do counteroffensive, other parts where they do offensive operations, so similar trends. Today, Orekhov was shelled. It's not far from the front line in Zaporozhye. 7 people died, and there are several wounded. It was a guided air bomb that hit the building where humanitarian aid was being distributed, killed 7 people and wounded several. As for the front, not much changes there. We also heard that something blew up in Jankoy. Well, yeah, there were shots and shellings, and Russian side is reporting that their air defense systems shot down all Ukrainian missiles, but we learn about the real results usually a few days later. There were some explosions, yes. Sometimes we know immediately, other days we don't. So for now, we cannot confirm that. All right, let's move on. Another news today, somewhat unexpected. Continuing the news from June 24th with the mutiny. French newspaper Libération posted an article stating that in July, 1st of July, the Russian president actually met with Prigozhin, and today Putin's press secretary Peskov comes out and says that that meeting actually took place on the 29th of June, so basically 5 days after the mutiny, and there were about 30 commanders of private military corps Wagner, and Prigozhin himself was participating in that meeting as well. Do you believe that he was present at that? Yeah, I do. In my opinion, that looks, and I was told today basically, that Prigozhin is being poured with all kind of propaganda materials and Russian media. Since June 24th, that campaign never stopped. So what's the play in that? Why Putin would still be meeting him, given that it was rated as a mutiny attempt? Why would he still be meeting with him? Well, it's understandable why, because Wagner is one of the important figures in the Russian inner political shenanigans and even external politics as well, so it's difficult to just liquidate that. And they do have a lot of people on the hook, including Putin himself, I suspect. But bureaucratic infighting in Byzantium-type government did not disappear anywhere. It still exists. And the leader that is getting weaker is choosing an option that is a compromise in all directions. So he did not remove neither Gerasimov nor Shoigu from military command, as Wagner demanded, and also nothing happened with Wagner, even though some sides are screaming that things should be worked. Wagner should be punished, and he's letting some parts in Russian media to continue working on Wagner and pouring all kind of compromise material on them, because Wagner also needs to be kept in check. And at the same time, they returned $10 billion to Wagner, and they returned a bunch of other assets that were seized during the mutiny. So Putin basically is incapable to neither destroy, remove, liquidate any of the groups, which underlines his weakness. The only group that he hasn't met so far are the families of the pilots who died, who were shot down by Wagner troops, who were trying to protect his regime. And I do not believe in the capability of Russian public to come out and bring their grievances that Putin is meeting those who killed their husbands but is not meeting with them. I don't believe that they will be active enough to do that, but as a fact, it still stands. He didn't. And in political practice, any compromise decision like that is worse than any fringe decision. So the story is still having a continuation. In a Telegram channel by PMC Wagner is posting new messages saying everything is just beginning. And some hotshots are already screaming that Wagner will go back to the front, will invade Ukraine from all the different directions, and the situation will change. And we're smiling from here, saying, well, we'll see who invades from where and what happens. Right. Why did not they show anything before? Oh, they did. Yeah, they buried about 40,000 near Bakhmut. In reality, probably even more. I want to say from the apparatchik point of view, that looks like a complete stupidity, because you made a selection in favor of institutional hierarchy, and Putin acknowledges that, yeah, Shoigu, by his action, and Gerasimov are maybe bad, but he is still holding them. But the problem is that he was the one who appointed them. And instead of holding that line strict, that's my line, these my people, he starts to zig and zag around and trying to appease Wagner and the other groups around it. It looks very clumsy. It may be a certain play around the topic, but it does look very clumsy. Then why would you even use the word treason and mutiny if you're still going to negotiate and use Wagner as an asset? Let's proceed. There is another topic. You probably have seen that. In Krasnodar, deputy of the city had a mobilization effort. Stanislav Zhitsky was shot to death in Krasnodar, according to media. He went on a morning run, and some unknown person was waiting for him near one of the sport complexes, and he shot him 4 times in back and chest, after which Stanislav Zhitsky died at a spot, and that unknown person fled the scene. And by the way, he was reportedly the captain of one of the submarines that was shooting missiles at Ukraine, including some of the well-known shots and hits that resulted in death of a young girl that was in the media. Do you think Ukraine has any influence in that? Who knows, Mark? Maybe you can tell us a little? No. I would say I don't know. Do you think that shooter would not be found? I don't know. You're not there. Okay. Let's proceed. 162,000 with us. Another news that in NATO, for the first time after the Cold War, the first time since those years, there were plans agreed upon how NATO will react if Russia will take any active action. So why am I touching that? Is that the fallout from Turkey delivery of Azov officers to Zelensky. So in Moscow there's a hysteria, the propaganda is screaming that they've been raped by their ally, so-called Turkey, and they are screaming. They understood they've been had. They've been seriously had, and they got the message. It was not an accident. It was not something like, oh, oops, sorry. They understood that it was done on purpose. It was done to harm them. And supposedly, in some with other statements made by Zelensky, it was made to show who is the master in that part of Eurasia and Caucasus regions, Black Sea Basin, and this is Erdogan. So Putin should not even consider that he can rule anything or control anything in that area. So I think Erdogan, or actually you comment, do you think Erdogan is trying to restore his quality that was eroded somewhat with China intervening in the process, or does he want to make a statement to Moscow only? How would you characterize that? Some representatives of Russian leadership already made statements that Turkey is now becoming from neutral country into an enemy country. Yeah, there was some lesser-known bureaucrat who was reflecting somebody's opinion above who said that, yes. So he made the statement, right? Good, that is good. And nothing helps to the fall, nothing aids to the fall of Kremlin as adding more quarrels like the one with Turkey. And Erdogan was doing a true Eastern dance and strategy around Putin, confusing him with one action and doing other actions, and always minding his own interest. And Turkey is not afraid of using the whole spectrum of influence, from financial shenanigans and puzzling some of the Russian assets that they can reach to, and including even some military incidents. And he was basically showing that Putin depends upon him to a much greater degree than he depends on Putin. And they might have weighted Putin again, found him to be too light. And when Erdogan came out and said that Ukraine deserves to be in NATO, that's where my light bulb went up. And I thought that the weights have moved. Erdogan stopped playing equidistance from NATO and Putin and desire to be a useful aid. And the element of that statement made with Zelensky that Turkey will be providing the safety for the grain deal, regardless of Russian position, that is a strong one. Basically, Turks said that we can open fire on Russian Navy and Russian jets if they will try to intervene into a grain deal. And I'm quoting here, such behavior is basically stabbing in the back, as Russia is writing in their propagandist media that delivery of, as they call, terrorist Azov people and breaking previous agreements. Some Bondarev, no-name person, bureaucrat functionary, comes out and says that Turkey is now actively aiding our enemies. So they got the signal. Do you think they will completely pull out of the grain deal? I think they might, but it doesn't change really anything, right? Situation becomes sharper and not in favor of Russia, because seriously attacking international cargo ships that will be protected by Turkey, that is a bad proposition. And the whole behavior of Turkey is a stabbing in the back, or maybe even lower the back. And if Russia wants to fight also with Turkey, we can only cheer that. All right, there was one more statement from Erdogan right before the stream, and he said that he's calling upon NATO to open the roadmap for his country to join European Union, and then Sweden will have a road open into NATO. So he's calling upon EU to open the road for Turkey to join them, and they will then unblock the pathway for Sweden to join NATO. So such a statement, it's pretty aggressive, right? let us into European Union, which is very improbable, right? It is improbable, I think. So such a sharp posture. Do you think, what would you think about that? Well, when one side declares conditions that are unacceptable for the other, it means that they likely will try to stick with their same politics. Do you think that position about Sweden integration can be overcome within Turkey? Overcome by whom? I mean, by NATO or some other allies, because they cannot rely just on Ankara for security, right? Sweden de facto, Mark, is pretty calm about that. They de facto are already part of NATO. They have a ton of bilateral and multilateral agreements about protection and cover, if need be, if there is a military conflict with, of course, Russian Federation, who else is on that part of Europe. And they feel themselves rather calm about everything. If they get welcomed into NATO now, good. If later, just as fine. And I did talk to Swedes as well during my travels. They are very calm about these perspectives. They don't get bothered with this. They're using an old principle. If time passes, they'll either the Shah will die or the donkey will die. And they're not going to bend anywhere for Turkey. And that action that Sweden police allowed to burn Quran in their country, I'm not a fan of these actions, but they did allow such, and they basically highlighted again that Erdogan is not a factor for them. They knew, and they still allowed. So wait, this calmness, is it depending upon Sweden not considering it to be principally important to be part of NATO, or they already are fortified enough with contracts and guarantees and all, so they don't really care? Yeah, they don't really care. It's a nice bonus for them. They already have their security organized around the current situation. De facto, they're already in full measure providing their own security, including by the means of NATO neighbors. You know, I will be an opponent to your point of view here, because for Ukraine, of course, one thing is being in active conflict and not being a member of an alliance. But when, for example, a bloc has not 31, but 50 or 100 countries, it's becoming more and more impossible to deal with it, right, for the enemy. Mark, Russian leadership knows very well the real systems of agreement between Sweden, Denmark, Great Britain, and United States and other countries in the region, and how they are interconnected and guarantees they have for protecting each other. So Russia will not take anything active against Sweden, maybe via hybrid warfare, like send more refugees or cyber or something else. But attacking Sweden, I'm not even talking about them even capable of that. It's just they have no guts to do that. They just have no guts. Okay, in NATO summit, there likely will be another element discussed on the background about Russian nukes being present on the territory of Belarus. Do you think we should expect a plan or any reaction to these activities? You remember that Prime Minister of Poland, Morawiecki, came out with a request asking to place NATO nuclear weapons on the territory of Poland. I think Baltic countries are of the same opinion. So do you think anything will be discussed on summit in regards to Belarus? They likely will make some decisions, and it will be outlined in that communication at the end of it, but placing American nukes in Poland is likely not a NATO matter, because it is a decision that can be made between the United States and independent country of Poland. If they need to, they can. They don't need NATO affirmation to do it. But it'll be up to them how to gauge these risks and threats, and do they need nuclear escalation, even though it may be on the tactical nukes level. Do they need it on the border of Poland and Belarus? I think it's more of a political statement from the Prime Minister of Poland rather than a practical one. So you think that on the summit, this topic will be discussed under closed doors? They will discuss it. They will probably insert it into their final communication. They'll outline their political position about nukes and the transfer of them, because it's not only about the borders and the countries where they're placed, but the fact of transferring nuclear weapons actually violates a core of one of the main safety and security systems in the world. So they will react to that. But I don't think one should expect some super breakthroughs or some rapid actions like placing military warheads in Poland, nuclear warheads in Poland. This is a path of escalation, and I don't think they'll follow that, because they still have to look responsible politicians in their countries in front of their voters. They're not. They don't think they can allow to take a strong position. They're not Reagan, right? And we don't have Reagans now. But by the way, Reagan won. Yeah, he did, but we don't have Reagans now. And he did respond to escalation with his decisions. Right, he did. I was living about 15 miles away from border with NATO when I was a little kid when these things were happening. And escalation was pretty drastic. You could see it on the Soviet side. But that was Reagan. Okay, that doesn't cheer us up. We've been live for 32 minutes today. We have 172,000 with us, 63,000 click the like button. Big ask to our viewers. Please do not forget to click like, share, and subscribe. And do not forget to subscribe to Feygin Live, to Olexiy Arestovych, and to the Privateer Station if you have not done that yet. It's all in the description to that video. All right. Elon Musk, he continues his festivities. We touched upon him several times, but he continues. And he, of course, posts everything on Twitter. It's his network. He's capitalizing on it. Elon Musk considers, and it's a translation, that poor counteroffensive can lead Ukraine to permanently losing some of the territories. And that factor is probably what holds Ukraine from throwing everything into the fight. And verbatim, his tweet sounds as follows, of course, in Russian, that the best of Ukraine is dying in trenches, almost without any territorial acquisitions. Whichever side goes into offensive will lose more. And Russia has 4 times the population of Ukraine and has a chance to win even with the similar losses on the front to Ukraine. And if Ukraine fails in counteroffensive, then Russia can capture more territories. That's why there was not a big counteroffensive. So basically, counteroffensive didn't happen because there's not enough resources to convert that and to lead to full deoccupation. So why do you think Musk needs that? I think he's criticizing Biden, but he's not supporting Trump as well. No, he's not for Trump. He's for the other group. And Musk is like a third way, basically. Neither that way nor that way. He seems more like Republican-leaning, but... And his neutrality in some questions is not exactly a Republican position. It's sort of a third way represented by him, by Joe Rogan, by Jordan Peterson, and that other guy whom he fought with in jiu-jitsu and won over that professor of Ukrainian descent or Jewish descent from MIT. Little guy. Doesn't matter. I forgot his name. I gave him the guy whom I gave an interview to, and he never released it. So yeah, they represent sort of the third path for everything good against everything bad. Wars are bad, should be stopped. What can I say? If Prigozhin would start discussing exploration of space, it would sound probably similar to what it sounds like when Musk discusses military strategy. Because when he makes statements like that, what conclusions do you draw out of it? Why not to draw a conclusion that Ukraine needs more support so they can actually overcome and they can expand their counteroffensive? That would be a position, but he doesn't have it. Yep, that's strange. All right. Did you hear about the story that a Ukrainian veteran, an amputee, was not allowed on a flight of Hungarian company out of Tel Aviv in Israel? And there are some videos online where the guy could not take a seat because of prosthetics, and he was explaining that he lost his leg in war, and he's returning from treatment in Israel back home, and he had to stand for an hour and a half in a corner while things were being settled, and after that he fell and wounded his hand, and after which he was disembarked from the plane. And yeah, Mark, the jet company already apologized for that incident. Israel also says there may be something else in that story. So I would call upon our viewers to wait, to give some time to understand what actually happened, and do not call all Hungarians looking at one incident. So let's not scale it. It's also a low coaster. It could be a very non-Hungarian crew, could be international crew on that one. So I would be very careful about ascribing that to Hungarians. I don't like Orban, but let's still be objective. Oh, yeah, well, some people like him. Oh, who do you mean? Putin does? Okay. Yeah, besides that, we don't know more details about, is it Hungarian crew? Maybe even it was the most brutal violation of human rights. In this case, it is, we should not be ascribing that to the whole Hungarian people. It is a bad situation, of course, and it needs investigation. There are some very strict international rules about having passengers during flight, and the fact that he actually was made to stand for an hour and a half. This is bad. So this should not be left uninvestigated, and guilty parties definitely should be punished, but it deserves a proper investigation. All right, we've been almost 40 minutes. 176,000 are with us. Practically 70,000 clicked the like button. Thank you for the stream, and thank you for continuous patronage of our work here, and we hope that you do not forget to subscribe as well to both Feygin Live, we do appreciate that, and to Olexiy Arestovych, and of course to the private TV station. We did not do any poll today because some people are criticizing us that they're too light, but I thought we should wait for the results of NATO summit, and we'll poll you about the results when they become available. And on Wednesday, we'll get together and discuss whatever is known, whatever it concludes with. Thank you very much, Olexiy. We'll see you on Wednesday at 10 p.m. and we'll discuss the results of a NATO summit. There probably will be something to discuss. Everybody, goodbye and good luck.